if you want to find out how to draw this super cool piece, make sure you keep watching. Yo, what's up you guys? How's it going? It's your boy ZH Comic Art, and today I'm gonna be drawing this super cool Batman. Did it using micron pens, Copic markers, and honestly I had to rush it and draw it in like 2 to 3 hours. But I will teach you guys how to do that step by step, and if you're new here, welcome to the family. The ZHC fam is on the daily grind. We post every single day, so make sure you're part of it. And with that being said, we're gonna get right in and get started. Let's go! Alright, so let's get started. I started out by trying to draw a circle for the torso, but unfortunately it did not look the way I wanted it to, so I decided to erase it. Here I am. I'm not going in with a lot of detail at first. This is just going to be the basic shapes, basic forms. They're really just kind of the forms for making a tube figure, and I'm keeping it really light. As you can see, I'm trying to measure there. This is where I actually get all the proportions done and make sure everything's in the right place. I have no detail in so far. The legs I'm actually going to struggle with down the line because I didn't rough in the legs that well. Over here you can see there's starting to become a little bit of muscle definition. There's the pec. Now I'm drawing the rib cage. Those are the abs, and I'm kind of just defining the shape of the muscle. Not actually defining each individual muscle, but more the overall shape. This is what I like to call the underdrawing. I always start with this, so this is where I can make all my adjustments. As you can see, I pull out my eraser a ton over here. Once I actually get this down, I erase a lot less because I already have the basic forms I need to go into my final drawing. I will actually approach this a little bit differently from my normal drawings because I'm planning to ink and color this. So I'm not going to be erasing it down and doing another figure on top of it. I think I'm just going to do everything in one layer so I can ink it right over. There's the cape, just dropping in the cape. And that left arm, or is it his right arm? His left arm. I had a little bit of a struggle with it proportionally, but since this is the basic layer, I have plenty of time to fix it. You can see I'm trying to adjust it a little bit more. And I think it is really good to kind of see my thought process as I go along over here. As you can see, once in a while I lift up the page because when the page is actually down flat on the table, just a quick tip, it's going to be slightly distorted, so the proportions might not be what they seem. Usually the legs are closer to you, so the legs might accidentally turn out to be longer than what you might want them to be. So it's always good, especially if you're drawing on a flat table, to pick it up every once in a while to look at it. That's just one of my tips. I think it'll really help. I didn't really figure that out until maybe like a year or two ago, but it really helped with the proportions. So here you see I'm starting to add in the, what are those called? The spikes that Batman has. And over here, I'm actually starting to rough in the details. Just roughing them in. I'm not really tightening them yet. The tight lines will all be done with the micron pen. There you can see I'm just measuring proportions to make sure everything is where it has to be. I actually adjust the face a couple of times. At this stage, I kind of play around with it until it looks right. Most of the other body parts, like the arms and the torso, are already roughed in. The legs I actually don't like yet, so you will see me erasing that a lot, and you just saw me erase that part. So it's really good to stay loose in this part because you're going to be doing a lot of erasing because you can constantly change the pose. I think the pose is mostly in the first underdrawing. Once you have the pose down, you kind of know where you want to go. This is where you can adjust all the proportions and stuff. Just keep drawing until it looks right. And for the hand, I also adjust a couple of times to make sure it's what I want it to be. I'm roughing in the torso now, some muscles in the neck. There's the belt. I decided to go with a belt that Jim Lee drew a while ago. So it's not the typical Batman belt I'm used to drawing. And over here, you're going to see me struggle with the legs. Well, not struggle, but adjust the legs a lot to make sure it's correct. A couple of times I felt like the proportions were slightly off, and I think that was due to not sitting like directly above it, and I was kind of looking at an angle. And since I'm recording it, the camera's kind of in the way, so I can't look at it directly from above. I have to kind of look at it from the bottom. It's slightly harder to get the right proportions, but this is also the stage where you can keep playing around with it, and as you can see, I'm not going to stop adjusting it until it looks right to me. Again, picking up the paper constantly to make sure the proportions are correct and nothing's distorted. So at this point, I already have the basics roughed in. The legs might be a little bit rougher than I would like, and sorry that my head is in the frame over here. Usually for the eyes, I like to go really close because I want to make sure that they're lined up perfectly, because the eyes are kind of what draws the reader in, what kind of conveys the emotion, and I really need to get the face correct. That's why I'm leaning in so much. For the rest of the body, I can stay more loose. I can kind of lean back and do it, but especially for the face, I want to make sure I get the details and proportions right, otherwise it'll look really, really strange and off. Over here, as you can see, when I actually do go in with pens, I like to try to keep it nice and soft. This is kind of like the first layer. There's no line weights, it's just one really, really thin line. I believe I'm using 0.25 pen, I believe, and later I will go in with the thicker ones. But to start, I like to go really, really thin just to make sure I have everything roughed in. As you can see, the hand is super, super loose, but we will go in later with a thicker marker. We will add some line weights, and then we will do the shading. And a lot of people know that when you color with markers, sometimes it'll start smearing. So, I'm sorry. What we're gonna do is we are going to draw the whole thing. I really like to cross-hatch for my figures, but we're going to leave that until we are completely done with the Copic markers so that the cross-hatching doesn't smear. So just a tip, the order really matters because you will be coloring over it a lot. I think we are about ready to go in with line weights right now. So I'm taking my pencil, I'm kind of trying to figure out how I'm going to light it. So it's coming from the upper left, and we are actually going to be doing, what's that called? Secondary light source coming from the bottom right. As you can kind of see, I am shadowing so that the light source is coming from the upper left, but at the same time, I'm keeping in mind there's a light source coming from the lower right. So I'm leaving a lot of spaces open so that I can get the rim light in. Pretty much what I'm doing right now is I'm going a little bit at a time. I'm adding the core shadows, just shading anything that's turning away from the light, and I'm also adding the cast shadow, which is when an object casts a shadow onto another object, which creates like a little cast of a shadow. Sorry, I pretty much said nothing just now, but I think you guys know what I mean when I say cast shadow. And as you can see, if there's a muscle that's really protruding out, it's gonna catch the rim light, so I leave that open, and I will be coloring the rim light yellow later. So it's starting to come along a bit. I'm just adding more cast shadow under the cape. As you can see, I'm following the forms, and now I'm actually taking a very thick marker to try to add in some of the shadow. I think I was kind of a little bit rushed over here because usually I would add in the line weight before I start doing this. But in this case, I decided to go straight in because I did not have a lot of time. I think I finished this in 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. But yeah, it was a very, very quick drawing. As you'll notice throughout the piece, my markers are going to start running low on ink, so I'm going to have to improvise. That bottom part of the chest is catching the rim light, because if you stick your chest out, the muscle comes out a lot more than the other parts of the body. Yeah, so as you can see, I'm constantly switching markers because they keep running out of ink. Just shadowing a little bit, making sure if it turns away from the light, it is shadowed in. And I'm actually going in an order I don't usually go in, so I'm adding the shadows in, and then I am putting in the line weight afterwards. So there's a big cast shadow from the pectoral muscle casting onto the rib cage, and there's the actual rib cage's shadow. And as you can see, I'm starting to run out of the ink, so the shadows are kind of sketchy, and I think I'm gonna fill it in later with some other marker or pen. And the bottom of the torso is gonna start turning away from the light, so you will see me cast a lot of shadow down there. Honestly, the amount of shadow... Oh, okay, so there's the bigger marker. This will create a more dramatic effect if you have more shadow, but you can also create a more... what's that called? Normal effect? Is that the word I'm looking for? Or relaxed by casting a little bit less shadow. And the obliques, you can kind of just crisscross them. They're interlocking shapes. There we go on the other side. And obviously the other side is going to have a little bit less shadow because it is facing towards the light a little bit more. There's a cast shadow from the belt. I think at this point you guys pretty much know what I'm doing by now. I'm just adding the same shadows that I did on the right arm, and since I didn't completely roughen the muscles and I was kind of going fast, I was kind of guessing the muscles as I went. But at the same time, the muscles look correct because everything's interlocking, and nothing's just popping out of nowhere. So all the muscles have a connecting point and something they're connected to on the other side. Defining those tendons and muscles in the hand a little bit. And as you can see, the fingers are all shadowed in. I learned this from a couple of comic artists because they all did that, where if the hand turned under, everything was shadowed in. Now I'm starting to go in with the legs. As you can see, I didn't have a lot of muscles defined, so there's going to be a lot of guessing over here. I didn't really have time to go in and define all the muscles beforehand, which is ideally what you want to do, but this is not something I suggest, especially for a beginner. I suggest that you rough in all your muscles first, but if you kind of know what your anatomy looks like and you can somewhat BS muscles like what I'm doing right now, then go ahead and try it. But for beginners, I suggest you look at an anatomy book, see what the muscles are like, and actually rough it in before drawing it. Otherwise, you're not going to get a sense of reality and it will not look like actual anatomy. Yeah, so at this point you can kind of see me guessing the muscle forms. Usually, I think this was a technique I learned from David Finch, and David Finch learned this from Mark Silvestri, where you kind of circle in or block in your shadow before shadowing it. And when I don't really know what it looks like first, I kind of just start sketching it in, which is not ideal, but if you know what you're doing, you can pull it off most of the time. So that marker ran out of ink. I decided to use the wide marker I got, and it colors a lot faster, so let's watch this. ASMR. Wow, doesn't that look nice? It actually does look pretty cool now that I'm looking at this as a time lapse. Okay, color, 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 color. How fun. Alright, done with that. Unfortunately, that Copic marker, the shade of black, is slightly different from the Micron pens. but we're just gonna have to live with that. I guess it's not too noticeable, or is it? Shading in the cape, adding some extra shadow, and at this point I think we're almost ready to move on to the Copic markers. I'm just adding a few more touches and we should be ready to go in with Copics. I think I love to grab my Copics. There we go. Oh no, I grabbed something else. So adding some line weights. Oh, I remember what I did now. So I have a white pen that I will be using to kind of start creating the veins and little details in the suit. Alright, there we go. And since I was on a short time schedule, or whatever you call it, I had to use the white marker and I couldn't do it beforehand. So there we go, I'm just doing all this in white marker, and I will grab the white marker again at the very end to add in all the little details once again, because once it gets covered in Copic markers and I crosshatch, it kind of disappears. This white pen thing was something I taught myself, and it's like a little hack. I'm sure other artists do it, but I didn't learn it from anyone specifically. And it's great for drawing veins, great for drawing little ridges and bumps, really defines it. And I think we are gonna start using Copic markers now. I'm starting with the rim light. I didn't color it all the way in at first because I wanted to put another yellow, but that yellow turned out to be too bright. The rim light is honestly really fun to do. There we go. And the rim light is just a really strong light that goes from kind of like behind. Over here I'm taking, I believe it's the neutral 2 gray Copic marker. I'm using the lightest shade to color in the entire figure first, so it's kind of like the flats of the colors. Yeah, let's just call it the flats. So you know when you do Photoshop and you have the flat colors, this is pretty much it. So I'm just getting a color tone to start with, and now I'm going back in with my darkest shadow. I believe this is the neutral 8 marker. I'm kind of just shadowing the darkest points and a little bit out of the shadow, so it's kind of like a gradation or a gradient. Now I'm taking the second darkest marker, which is the neutral 6. I'm coloring, just trying to get a gradient. I actually will show you guys how to make a Copic marker gradient in another video, but it's pretty much just like this. I'm taking the neutral 4 now, I'm going over it again, pretty much what we did before, and this was really rushed, so I'm doing this extremely quickly. And finally we will take our neutral 2 marker again, and we are going to go over everything to make sure it blends evenly. There we go. Adding a little bit of detail. There we have the skin tones. We're just coloring that in. Not very hard, and yeah. Now I'm just adding up a few finishing touches, and we will be done very soon. At this point you would have noticed that I haven't even started cross-hatching yet, and oh, here we go. And that is because I didn't want it to kind of smear. So here we go, cross-hatching. And cross-hatching is something you want to do at the very end to make sure nothing smears. So yeah, if you want to check out another video on how to crosshatch, I left the link in the description down below. Here's a close-up of the crosshatching. There are a lot of cool crosshatching techniques I have taught, and I think that video will help you guys. So make sure you watch that after checking out this video. Also, this is actually for a giveaway, so if you want to find out how to win this piece, make sure you check out my last video where I tell you guys how you can win this drawing. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. This video shout out goes to Strategy Plays. If you want to win a shout out too, all you have to do is subscribe, turn on post notifications, and let me know down in the comments when you're done. Anyways, tomorrow I will be showing you guys how I make my pencil, the world's weirdest pencils, so make sure you guys come back tomorrow for that. I will see you guys then. And as always, keep those pencils moving. I'll see you guys next time.